is a danger to our democracy, not to Republicans and Democrats, to our democracy, to our Congress, to the People's House and the United States Senate, which was occupied. At least this House was not occupied. But members were terrified, and work was stopped, and democracy for a short period of time was overtaken by armed, violent insurrectionists. And certainly each one of us ought to be very concerned about getting at the bottom of why did that happen? How did it happen? How can we stop it from happening again? What are the resources that we need? And yes, who was responsible? Some perhaps are going to vote against this because that's what they fear. The 9/11 Commission, as Mr. Katko pointed out, made America safer. It made this institution safer. It made our law enforcement more acutely aware of the failures that led to 9/11. I hope this commission does the same. And it was right, and I've talked to numerous Republicans who tell me they think it was right that we focused on January 6th. Don't be distracted. Don't cover up or make more lacking in clarity by trying to deal with every problem that we may have. Focus on January 6th. Together, Mr. Katko and Mr. Toppin negotiated a bipartisan agreement to move forward with such a commission based on input from Democrats and Republicans. There are going to be a significant number of Republicans that vote for this bill. Unfortunately, the truth has been a victim over the last couple of weeks. It was okay for Liz Cheney to tell the truth once. But when the former president of the United States kept telling a lie, and she said, "That's a lie," each time that he said it, well, that was not appropriate. And so she was removed. But the truth was removed with her. See no evil, hear no evil. The commission, as a result of the ranking member Katko's participation in these discussions, will be equally composed, as I said. It will have subpoena power that will be shared by both sides. And I was pleased that we reached a bipartisan agreement. And sad for this institution, for this country, for the American people who must think, can't you agree on anything? The minority leader got what he asked for. And yet he won't take yes for an answer. Trump does not want this commission. That can be my only explanation. Throughout my career, both in the state Senate for 12 years, as president of the Senate, and here in this body for 40, I think I'm known on the other side of the aisle as somebody you can work with. I hope that's the case. Because I think that's the way Americans want us to work. President Trump opposes this commission. I'm not sure why. It's deeply disappointing that there is a division among Republicans about whether to support the ranking member who worked hard to get to this place and got what the minority leader asked for. except for the distraction, except for the dissembling. He didn't get that, but he got everything else. Mr. Speaker, I hope my Republican colleagues will think not about their politics, not about the former president, not about themselves. I hope they will think of the country, of this Congress, of this House. And as they do so, I hope they say to themselves, we will vote for this legislation. What if George Bush had said we shouldn't have a 9/11 commission? Perhaps out of fear that somehow the administration would have been perceived as being responsible for 9/11. They weren't. Wouldn't all of us said, what are you talking about? That we're not going to have a commission to see how we can protect the Capitol and why this Capitol was stopped from doing the work of our democracy. This legislation is going to pass. It's going to pass on a bipartisan basis, and I want to thank Mr. Katko for having the courage and the integrity to stand up fighting for what the minority leader asked for. That's Mr. Thompson, the funny thing about this. I hope senators will think long and hard about rejecting this bipartisan compromise to move forward to protect our democracy and to lift it up as the beacon that it has been and needs to be not only for our own citizens but for all the world. How sad that day was as the world watched as TV showed them America's citadel of democracy and of freedom invaded by its own citizens. Vote yes. It's the right thing to do. I yield back.
Gentleman from Maryland yields back. Gentleman from Mississippi reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I had intended not to speak. But the careful mask of bipartisanship seems to have faltered here at the last, with the majority leader's attacks on the minority leader, who has not spoken, and the leader in the Senate, minority leader in the Senate, for comments he's made in public, but not in debate. And so what was an image of bipartisan cooperation has now become one more partisan attack. And it caused me to believe that it was important to stand up and say this. How can you have a bipartisan commission with an all-Democrat staff? How do you do that? And why is it that there is no willingness to look into all of the riots and the arson and the violence and the burning? If we're concerned about the danger that police officers were in on January 6th, and certainly they were, then why don't we have that concern for the dangers, the violence, the injuries, the deaths that have been faced by police officers across this country? Why is one form of political violence equivalent to 9/11 when a blind eye has been turned by this Congress, or at least by the majority in this Congress, to that same phenomenon across this country for a year? Where is the inquiry into that? when the images are raised, the lurid images about insurrection. Let me just say this. If it was an insurrection, it was the worst example of an insurrection in the history of mankind. It was a riot, it was a mob, and it was significant, and it was troublesome. But this is not bipartisanship, and I fear that the gentleman from New York may find that he has been played.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Well, I'm not going to argue with the previous speaker. I just said read the bill. And if you read the bill, you'll understand it is a bipartisan bill. It's not a partisan bill. It's absolutely bipartisan. The staff will be picked just like the staff was picked for the 9/11 Commission. It's just like the earlier bill the ranking member talked about at the Rodney Davis bill. I mean, it's easy. So we look, Mr. Speaker, at this issue because the world saw what happened on January 6th, and it's clear that we've put together a bipartisan bill for the good of the country, and it's in that spirit that we're here today. Mr. Speaker, how much time do we have?
Gentleman from Mississippi has 6 minutes remaining. Gentleman from New York has 15 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from New York, the chair of the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, Ms. Maloney, for 2 minutes.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the chairman for yielding and the ranking member for their extraordinary leadership, for doing the right thing, and for working to make this country safer and stronger. Like my friend on the other side of the aisle from North Carolina, didn't intend to speak either. But this is so important. As a New Yorker, I was closely involved in supporting the work of the 9/11 Commission. It, too, like January 6th, was one of the darkest days in the history of our country, and we needed answers on how such a horrible thing could happen. Almost 3,000 people were murdered just because they went to work that day. Many things needed to be answered, and this body came together. We were united. We were determined. We passed the commission. We had two outstanding leaders, Governor Keene and Lee Hamilton. They did everything together. They issued a report that sold more copies than Harry Potter. I nominated it for a National Book Award, and it laid out what happened so clearly from their joint investigations. And more importantly, it told us what to do about it. They had a series of recommendations to make this country safer. This body worked together and enacted most of them, and it did make this country safer. In fact, the law enforcement in my city, I get periodic reports on attempts to hurt us and how the reforms and the programs we put in place, how they're helping us, making us stronger and protecting us better. We need this January 6th Commission for the sake of America. Let's stop fighting long enough to work together to help our country understand what happened. Why did it take 4 hours for the National Guard to respond? In New York, they would have been there in 10 minutes. Why didn't you respond to all of the news reports about what was happening? We need answers. Let's come together and work together and get them. A 9/11 commission, a January 6th commission, I urge for the sake of the country, everyone should vote for it.
Time has expired. Gentleman from Mississippi reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gomert.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank Speaker and the ranking member. Look, things have changed a lot since the 9/11 Commission, because back then we did not have a problem on both sides, either side of the aisle, condemning anti-Semitic remarks. Now one side has a problem doing that. Back then we didn't have, we had never in the history of Congress had one party commit what is arguably a felony up to 20 years in prison by preventing an ongoing session of Congress, the exact charge, 1512, 18 U.S.C., that is being alleged against people that came in. As a judge, I would have no problem sentencing anybody that broke into the Capitol, anything that committed a crime here. But let's be real, the partisanship has been dramatic. And that's why it's different now than the 9/11 Commission. Let's get back to being bipartisan and not use every tool as a partisan stick to beat Republicans with. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Plaskett, for 1 minute.
The gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of this bill, the National Commission, to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. I want to thank Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Katko for bringing this bill to the floor. On January 6th, we witnessed one of the darkest moments in our nation's history when a violent mob attacked the U.S. Capitol. These individuals desecrated the halls of Congress, attacked law enforcement, and attempted to stop the democratic process. The clearest way for us to uphold our oath to defend the Constitution and protect this institution, our democracy, from those who directly attempt to thwart its operations is through an independent, evenly divided, bipartisan commission. We need to understand not just what were the breakdowns in security and failures of our intelligence, but why. What are those issues which caused fellow Americans to believe they needed to overthrow their government? Those who believe the former president had no culpability should not be afraid of a commission that derives its power from both sides equally. I ask all of my colleagues to join me in supporting this bill. I yield back, and thank you.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Mississippi reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the Speaker. I thank the gentleman from New York for his work on this effort. I appreciate my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and the intent of what we're trying to accomplish. Obviously, we're all very concerned and should be concerned about what occurred on January 6th. All of us who are here in the chamber, all of us who saw what unfolded. My concern, and the reason that I'm opposing this legislation, is that I believe we've got a significant amount of power with our existing structures in place, with the committees and oversight, judiciary and otherwise, and well as investigations going on underway by the Department of Justice, that we ought to be looking at that and using those powers to do what we can now to seek the truth wherever it may lead. I have questions right now about Department of Justice, where we've got 450 Americans who've been arrested. I don't know for how long. I don't know how many of them are in jail for what period of time. We're trying to look into that. I've sent letters to DOJ to get those answers. I wish the gentlelady who spoke, the chair of the Oversight Committee, would afford us the ability to call people forward from the Department of Justice. Let's inquire as to what's going on. Let's inquire about the investigations. Let's inquire about the facts that have been found. Let's use the powers that we have and the powers of this body and the committees we have to seek the information and the truth wherever it may lead. I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas yields back. Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
The gentlewoman from Illinois is recognized for 30 seconds.
I want to thank Chairman Thompson for his leadership. And while the events of January 6th were devastating and will stain our country's history forever, I have no doubt that democracy will prevail. This nation has fought back against hatred, authoritarianism, and fascism since the very founding. Yes, I stand proudly today to ask for a January 6th commission so that we can develop a full public record that will let us know how we can avoid this in the future. We should all vote yes. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Mississippi reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to take a few moments to address some of the arguments that have been made here today, and some arguments have been made in opposition to this bill. One of them is talking about the scope of the commission being too narrow. I want to note that the commission is granted sufficient scope and flexibility to investigate targeted violence and domestic terrorism relevant to the January 6th attack. It will be up to the commission to decide how far they want to go with that imprimatur. Do I feel that the attack on the Capitol on April 2nd that killed a Capitol police officer is relevant? I do. I hope the commission does too. Do I feel that the June 17th attack on Republican members of Congress relevant to the January 6th attack is relevant? I do, and I hope the commission does. They have the flexibility to do so if they want. If there are other issues outside of this scope, we can look into them. We can have separate legislation, and I encourage my colleagues who are concerned about that to do that. And another charge I heard was that the commission could be controlled by partisan staff hired unilaterally by the commission chair. That is simply not true. Here's what the bill does. It requires consultation between the chair, appointed by the Democrats, and the vice chair, appointed by the Republicans, for any hiring of staff, and further requires that it be in accordance with rules agreed upon by the commission. The commission creates the rules as a team. Then they hire as a team. And lastly, there's been some concerns or arguments made about the criminal investigations. Make no mistake about it. This commission has nothing to do with the criminal investigations. This commission, by law, cannot interfere with criminal investigations. Criminal investigations alone won't get us what we need, like the 9/11 Commission concluded. It won't get us the recommendations, the insight, the expertise from the people on the commission who can come in, look at this Capitol security matrix and say, this is what needs fixing. A prosecutor can't tell you that. The commission can. And that's what we want to do. Second, the bill specifically requires the commission to respect ongoing investigations and build upon the investigations, learn from them, and avoid unnecessary duplication. This language, in that respect, goes further than the 9/11 Commission and H.R. 275 in granting deference to other ongoing investigations. So I just want to make sure people are clear about that going forward. I also want to make sure that at this time, I know for the record that I've reserved the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Ryan.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
I want to thank the gentleman from New York and the other Republicans who are supporting this and thank them for their bipartisanship. To the other 90% of our friends on the other side of the aisle, holy cow. Incoherence. No idea what you're talking about. Benghazi, you guys chased the former Secretary of State all over the country, spent millions of dollars. We have people scaling the Capitol, hitting the Capitol Police with lead pipes across the head, and we can't get bipartisanship. What else has to happen in this country? Cops. This is a slap in the face to every rank and file cop in the United States. If we're going to take on China, if we're going to rebuild the country, if we're going to reverse climate change, we need two political parties in this country that are both living in reality, and you ain't one of them. I yield back the balance of my time.
Back the balance of his time. Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair. The gentleman from Mississippi reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that we all take a deep breath right now. And everybody breathe for a minute. And everybody stop the theatrics. And everybody stop the arguments that are not relevant to this issue. This is a very solemn moment. We're here to talk about something that's very important to the entire of our government and the entire of our country. And I ask that we think about the officers and their families and conduct ourselves accordingly. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve. Mr. Speaker, recognize the gentlelady from New Jersey for 30 minutes, Ms. Watson Coleman.
For 30 seconds. The gentlewoman from New Jersey is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you. Mr. Katko said I could have 5 more. I just want to say that January the 6th was a frightening experience. It was an assault upon the fundamentals of this government. It was an assault upon the place I thought I was going to be the safest I could possibly be. And we politicized this. This is an opportunity to bring this bipartisan commission into existence so that we can get out of the politics of it and look at the facts that happened, the evidence that happened, and the recommendations that will ensue from that effort. And so I wholeheartedly support this effort. I am grateful for the bipartisanship of it, and I pray that all of our colleagues will support this. I thank you, and I yield back.
Chairwoman yields back the balance of her time. Gentleman from Mississippi reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, may I inquire as to how much time we have?
The gentleman from New York has 9.5 minutes. The gentleman from Mississippi has 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is not about partisan politics. It's about finding the truth and addressing the vulnerabilities of our security apparatus so that we can emerge stronger and better prepared. The January 6th attack was a completely preventable failure of intelligence, information sharing, decision-making, and preparedness. And the Capitol Police and D.C. Police suffer greatly and continue to suffer as a result. The institutions of our democracy are and will continue to be a target for extremists set on using violence to further their ideology. And we in Congress owe it to this nation, to our constituents, and to the dedicated men and women who risk their lives every single day to protect those institutions. And I honor them. To see that we learn from those attacks, that we get answers to the hard questions, and that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Capitol Police officers Brian Sicknick and Howard Liebengood, as well as D.C. Police Officer Jeffrey Smith, all lost their lives in the wake of the January 6th attack. Over 140 more law enforcement officers, 140, were injured as a result of that attack. Less than 4 months later, on April 2nd, Capitol Police Officer William Billy Evans was killed, and another officer was injured when yet another extremist attacked the Capitol. And of course, we can't forget the 2017 terrorist attack against Republican members of Congress during practice for the congressional baseball game. Were it not for the officers involved, there would be scores of dead congressmen. That's the plain truth. I acknowledge the heroic efforts of Capitol Police officers David Bailey and Crystal Griner. We owe it to all of these officers and their families to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. This legislation is modeled directly on the legislation that created the 9/11 Commission. I sincerely believe that this commission, with strong support from this body, will embark on an objective, nonpartisan search for answers and solutions, just as the 9/11 Commission did. And again, I want to thank my friend, Chairman Thompson, for his partnership. I urge all of you in the body, all of you on both sides, not just my side or not just your side, all of us, to set aside politics just this once. Just this once. I beg you, and pass this bill. I was a prosecutor for 20 years prior to coming here in Congress. And many times we'd meet at 4:30 in the morning or 5 in the morning, and they would get ready to go out and do the raids and arrest very, very dangerous people. And I was always the last people to see them before they went out to get these awful, dangerous people off the street. Drug dealers, murderers, violent people. They did their job every day, and I was sending them into harm's way, and it always made my heart sink. Imagine being a family member of these officers who do this. So let's take a deep breath and think about what's really important here. These people every single day are willing to lay down their lives for us. They deserve better, and we're going to deliver this. And we're going to deliver it on behalf of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. And we're going to deliver it on behalf of Capitol Police Officer Howard Liebengood. And we're going to deliver it on behalf of Capitol Police Officer William Billy Evans. And we're going to deliver it on behalf of D.C. Police Officer Jeffrey Smith. And we're going to deliver it on behalf of D.C. Officer Michael Fanone and so many others who struggled with the events of that day. And we do so on behalf of the people who risked their lives for us and continue, like Police Officer David Bailey and Capitol Police Officer Crystal Griner. I want these officers and their families to know that we are doing it not for us and not for politics. We are doing it for them. We're doing it for them. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of time. Gentleman from New York, Mr. Katko. Gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And let me, at the outset, salute Mr. Katko for his agreeing to work in a bipartisan manner so that we get this bill to the floor and adopt it today. Mr. Speaker, we're here today at a unique moment in American history. Trust in our government's ability to share information and coordinate at all levels to keep our democracy secure was severely shaken by the January 6th attack. We need a bipartisan commission with experts who put country ahead of party to come together just as the 9/11 Commission did to lay out the facts and propose solutions to make us more secure. When the chairman of the 9/11 Commission issued their final report, they concluded a message to the public. It asks that each of us remember how we felt on that day of the attack. It asks that we recall the grief and sorrow. This moment is no less historic, no less important, no less momentous, and it requires the same common action, both as Congress and as a country. And I, too, salute the brave men and women of the Capitol Police who put their lives on the line on January 6th, protecting this citadel of democracy. And it's in their spirit that I ask that you vote in support of this legislation. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time has expired pursuant to House Resolution 409. The previous question is order on the bill. The question is on the engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
To establish the National Commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol complex and for other purposes.
The question is on the passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed without objection. Motion. Gentleman from New York.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to a question of the privileges of the House and send to the desk House Resolution 414, directing the attending physician to provide updated mask-wearing guidance.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 414. Whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a guidance on March 13, 2021, stating that Americans who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 no longer need to wear a mask indoors or outdoors in almost all scenarios. Whereas the 3 widely available vaccines against COVID-19 are highly effective. Whereas Dr. Anthony Fauci, stated on May 16th that it is very unlikely that a vaccinated person, even if there's a breakthrough infection, would transmit it to someone else. Whereas those who are fully vaccinated are shown not to carry the viral load necessary to spread the virus and therefore do not pose a significant risk. whereas those who have not yet received the vaccine pose no real threat to those who have been vaccinated. Whereas there may be members of the House of Representatives whose personal physician, for various reasons, may recommend that they do not receive the vaccine, whereas those who want to continue wearing a mask or taking other forms of precaution may do so. Whereas members of the House of Representatives have a responsibility to send a message to the American people that we can trust the safety and efficacy of the available COVID-19 vaccines. Whereas the continued House mask mandate sends the erroneous message that the efficacy of the vaccines cannot be trusted, whereas the continued House mask mandate is not based on the best available science and contrary to the latest CDC guidance, and is not in line with the protocols in place in the United States Senate and at the White House. And whereas the continued House mask mandate hinders the ability of the House to properly and effectively conduct the people's business, now therefore be it resolved that the attending physician, in consultation with the Director for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, should take timely action to provide updated mask-wearing guidance applicable to the Hall of the House of Representatives and committee meeting spaces for members and staff who are vaccinated against COVID-19, consistent with the public guidance released by the CDC on May 13, 2021.
The resolution qualifies. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
I have a motion at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Hoyer of Maryland moves to lay the resolution on the table.
The question is on the motion to lay the resolution on the table. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from California.
The yeas and nays, Mr. Speaker.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Member dissented by Representative Cardenas. Pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Representative Cardenas will vote yay on the motion to table. On that one.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Maxine Waters pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Ms. Maxine Waters will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Lawson of Florida, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lawson will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote.
Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on the motion to table. And as the member designated by Mr. Allred pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Allred will vote yes on the motion to table.
Michigan? New Jersey. New Jersey?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, as a member designated by Ms. Joyce Beatty, designated pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Joyce Beatty will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Mullen of Oklahoma, pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Mullen will vote nay on the motion to table. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Rush, pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Crenshaw of Texas, pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Crenshaw will vote nay on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Grijalva pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote yea on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Sewell pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Sewell will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Buchanan of Florida pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Buchanan will vote no on House Resolution 414.
Back. That's good. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. McHenry of North Carolina pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. McHenry will vote no on the motion to table.
Purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Wilson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Napolitano pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on the motion to table.
What state is she from? For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Slotkin pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Slotkin will vote yes on the motion to table.
What? South Carolina seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Wilson in South Carolina pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Wilson will vote nay on the motion to table.
Does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Donald Payne pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Payne will vote yes on the motion to table.
Purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Rupersberger of Maryland pursuant to House Resolution 8, I rise to announce to the House that Mr. Rupersberger will vote aye on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Kirkpatrick, pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Kirkpatrick will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Liu pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Liu will vote yes on the motion to table. As the member designated by Mr. Lowenthal pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote no on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Young from Alaska, pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Young will vote nay on the motion to table.
Missouri. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Missouri seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Cortez will vote yes on the motion to table.
On this vote, the yeas are 217 and the nays are 209. The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the this vote.
Mr. Austin Scott of Georgia votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 218 and the nays are 210. The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on passage of H.R. 3233, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3233, a bill to establish the National Commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol complex and for other purposes.
The question is on passage of the bill. Members will record their vote by electronic device. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Vern Buchanan pursuant to House Rule 8, I inform the House that Mr. Buchanan will vote no on House Rule 3233.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on H.R. 3233. And as the member designated by Mr. Allred pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Allred will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Wilson of South Carolina pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Wilson will vote nay on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Kirkpatrick, pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Kirkpatrick will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote no on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Napolitano, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
Purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Crenshaw of Texas pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House Mr. Crenshaw will vote no on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona pursuant to H. Res. 8, I hereby inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote aye on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Mullen of Oklahoma pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Mullen will vote no on H.R. 3233. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Wilson pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. McHenry of North Carolina pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. McHenry will vote no on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Slotkin, pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Slotkin will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Young from Alaska, pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Young will vote nay on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Donald Payne pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Payne will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
Purpose does the gentlewoman from Missouri seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Cortez will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Lawson of Florida, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lawson votes yes on final passage.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Maxine Waters pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Ms. Maxine Waters will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Sewell, pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Sewell will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
Does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Liu, pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Liu will vote yes on H.R. 3233. As the member designated by Mr. Lowenthal, pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Joyce Beatty pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Joyce Beatty will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As a member designated by Representative Cardenas pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House that Representative Cardenas will vote aye on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Rush pursuant to H. Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on H.R. 3233.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Rupertsberger of Maryland pursuant to House Resolution 8, I rise to inform the House that Mr. Rupertsberger votes aye on H.R. 3233.